Hey, this is Pastor Daryl here at Reconcile Church, Los Angeles, and I want to welcome you to the Teachable Moment series. You know, faithfulness for me has been a recurring theme that God has kept before me for quite some time. You know, it really became acute for me last year during our sermon series, The War Within, which was an expositional teaching time in Galatians 5 and 2 Peter 1. Before we examine a couple of passages, I wanted to lay out why this topic is critically important. You know, here in America, we live in an increasingly transient culture. People are flip-flopping from one thing to the next, and they're hibbity-hopping from one ministry to another and hustling and grinding from this gig to that gig. And, you know, whether it be relationships, jobs, churches, ideologies, political affiliations, the question that begs asking is, where is the faithfulness? You know, the word faithful, the adjectival form of the nounal word faith, is used roughly 67 times in the New Testament, depending upon your translation. And these passages, God, His Word, and His people are characterized by faithfulness. Look with me at Galatians 5:22 through 23. We refer to this passage as the fruit of the Spirit. I will return to this passage at a later date for a more comprehensive treatment, but for today's teachable moment, I would only like to highlight one of the fruit of the Spirit. The passage reads, "But the fruit of the Spirit is love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. The law is not against such things." You know, the seventh fruit of the Spirit is faithfulness. The work that the Spirit of God is producing and cultivating and developing in the lives of His people, in addition to the other 8 virtues, is faithfulness, dependability, reliability, trustworthiness, fidelity, commitment, and loyalty. The same way that the fruit on a tree demonstrates that the tree is alive, so it is with the follower of Jesus. If we are walking in the Spirit and living by the Spirit according to Galatians 5:16 and 25, then our lives should show forth the proof by way of the fruit of the Spirit. Faithfulness in the life of the Christian is undeniable proof that the Spirit is at work in us. Let's also consider 1 Corinthians 4, verses 1 through 2. Paul writes, "A person should think of us in this way, as servants of Christ and managers of the mysteries of God. In this regard, it is required that managers be found faithful." Keep in mind that the Corinthians have an ego epidemic running rampant in their church. Paul, wanting to counteract that error, provides 2 analogous nouns by which to describe the apostolic ministry: servants or assistants of Christ and household managers of the mysteries of God. In verse 2, Paul provides a prerequisite for house managers, and it's simply that they be found faithful. In other words, the manager or administrator of the master's house must be found to have faithfully executed his master's affairs while the master is away. Jesus told parables along these lines in the Gospels, and I believe Paul is relying on the teachings of Jesus to inform his instructions to the Corinthians. While the master is away, God is asking me, "Daryl, are you faithfully executing my affairs until I come again, or until I call you home?" How would you answer that question if asked the same question? As an aid to help you assess where you are in terms of how faithful you are now or have been in the past, there are 7 areas that we process our lives through here at Reconcile LA. And the first is marriage. Am I being faithful in my marriage? Am I giving myself and all that I am to my spouse for the glory of God? Or if you're called to singleness, are you being faithful to God in your commitment to purity and holiness? 2 is parenting. Am I modeling for my children what it means to love God with all my heart, soul, mind, and strength? You know, compelling Christian parenting is both caught and taught. You've got to model it and teach it. Are our kids catching us praying and worshiping and studying the Bible, engaged in life groups and journaling about our spiritual reflections and meditations, etc.? Are they catching us practicing spiritual disciplines? 3 is stewardship. Am I being faithful in how I am allocating my time, talents, and treasure? Am I being used to usher in the kingdom through the church? Or is it my unspoken plan to one day live in a kingdom that I have not invested in, sacrificed for, or lifted a finger to usher in? 4 is profession or vocation. Am I being faithful in my current profession or vocation? Am I working to please my boss or the Lord? Am I supervising my team or leading my organization in a God-honoring way? If you are unemployed or underemployed, ask the question, what position will allow me to maximize my gifts, talents, capacities, or endowments for the glory of God and my good? 5 is health. Am I taking care of myself health-wise? Ouch. I really struggle in this area. Still, God is saying, Daryl, you could stand to lose several pounds. You keep talking about losing weight and going on a diet, but you need to actually be about it. How are you doing in this area? 6 is relationships. Am I faithfully cultivating meaningful, healthy, boundary-drawn relationships that honor God and provide a sense of satisfaction and fulfillment? 7 is worldview. Am I faithfully developing a gospel-centered, kingdom-focused perspective on global affairs? Or is my political affiliation coloring and or distorting my worldview? If your liberal or conservative, left or right, Democratic or Republican ideologies weigh more heavily on how you see the world than does sacred scripture, then you've probably erected an idol in God's place. We're spending so much time on MSNBC, Fox News, and CNN, and we're great at parroting the political pundits' talking points, but when asked in the public square what would Jesus say or do, we're oftentimes unable to articulate a coherent message of the kingdom that offers hope and a viable alternative to a broken and bewildered world in which we live. As we wrap up today's teachable moment, every one of us must take a step back and evaluate how faithful we've been in stewarding the Master's affairs that He's entrusted to our care. As I look back over my life, I see seasons of faithfulness. I spent 16 years right out of high school, gainfully employed at the 20th Century Fox Film Corp. 20 years in my first ministry assignment, serving alongside my senior pastor, Dr. Joseph Matoyer Jr. 13 years I spent enrolled at Biola University and Talbot School of Theology, completing my undergrad degree in 2 master's programs. 23 and a half years, 18 and a half of those years married to my best friend, Stacy. 23 years, that's half of my life in one committed monogamous relationship. Now, while there are areas in my life where I've been faithful, there are still areas where I've either been unfaithful or areas where I need to persevere in faithfulness. Let me encourage you to assess where you are and pray about it and get committed to cultivating faithfulness in your life and ministry. Let me punctuate this teachable moment with this exhortation. The great hope of every Christian is to stand before the throne of God on Judgment Day, when the books of our lives are opened and the commendation that we most want to hear is the one that Jesus gave us to aspire to in Matthew 25, verses 21 and 23. Jesus said, His master said to him, "Well done, good and faithful servant. You've been faithful over a few things. I will put you in charge of many things. Share your master's joy." If I can help you order your life so that you have a reasonable expectation to hear Jesus direct these marvelous words to you on that day, reach out and let us know. Thank you for joining us for this episode's transformational, teachable moment. I look forward to sharing with you during the next episode. Take care.